it shine, let it shine.
Let it shine, let it shine. We all want to let our light shine. We want to see the light of our nation, of our city, of our world to shine in this new year. And yet there's another song that's been on my mind and in my heart throughout this week. It says, sometimes in our lives, we all have pain. We all have sorrow. But if we are wise, we know that there's always a new year, a new beginning. When you're not strong, I'll be there. You can lean on me. I'll be your friend. Because it won't be long before, too, I need someone to lean on. Lean on me. Well, we're headed into quite a year of 2021. We're going to need to lean on each other as we figure out how to go forward with vision and strength and hope with a growing global pandemic, historic political divisions, massive unemployment and food insecurity, the ongoing work for racial justice and equality and environmental sustainability. Now, there's that song we heard earlier, the choirs sing, which they sing every year on this first Sunday of the year, called New Year's Carol, which says, the new year comes as a little child with faith and hope and undefiled. Well, as I said earlier, it seems that this new year came with a pre-existing condition, a bunch of pre-existing conditions that we need to deal with. So as we enter this new year, I have been thinking to myself, what can I offer that will allow us to deal with the stress and the adversity that inevitably is going to be part of this new year so that we can still let our light shine despite it all. And that journey to look for something to say, something to hang on to, led me to a gemstone, a beautiful red ruby gemstone. Have you ever seen a ruby or held a ruby? I've never held a ruby, but a perfectly cut, shining, beautiful ruby gemstone like the one you see on your screen. Now, even more precious is a little innocent 6-year-old girl named Ruby. A girl whose smile shines like a gem. The real sparkle can be seen in her eyes and the pure, vivid spirit of a little girl. An intelligent, personable, fun-loving, well-behaved 6-year-old girl. Now, this particular girl has some things to teach us about facing stress and adversity. Now, it's hard to imagine any circumstances under which such a little child would be surrounded by a mob of angry, hateful adults yelling curses and threats at her. It seems unimaginable that mothers and fathers of other little girls and boys would wait for Ruby to walk by them and call her wretched names and tell her they're going to kill her or try to find a way to poison her. A 6-year-old girl. Or one woman who held up a miniature coffin with a child doll in it as Ruby passed by in order to taunt her and torment her and intimidate her. Can you believe that this is how a group of middle-class American men and women treated a precious little girl here in this land of the free and the brave? And it wasn't 200 years ago. It wasn't even 100 years ago. We're talking about barely 60 years ago. when this happened. This is the story of Ruby Bridges, the courageous, bright little girl who helped integrate the schools in New Orleans back in the early 1960s. What baffles me is how people from a country based in the values of ours could act this way, and not just 60 years ago, but now. A white supremacist group called the Proud Boys burned Black Lives Matter signs on the lawns of churches, black churches in Washington, D.C., just in the past few weeks. To get us where I want us to land this morning, let's first take a moment to reflect on the people who taunted Ruby Bridges, not to scorn them, not to thumb our noses at them, but to try to understand them. Now, many of them were people who considered themselves religious and who attended church. These are people who were, and I'm going to say are because they're still alive. This is all within the lifetime of many of us here. These are people who are probably ethical and kind people in most other aspects of their lives. These were the 1960s soccer moms and PTA parents and suburban families. How could such people express such hatred and fear towards a little girl? I think we have to go beyond just scorning, thumbing our noses, and try to really understand. The story of humanity is a tale it's a tale after tale filled with people hurting and exploiting and oppressing and misunderstanding one another. And we're in the heat of it right now in this country. Now, fortunately, alongside all of that cruelty and injustice, there have always been people who have been working at the same time towards justice and mercy and compassion. So let's step away from that scene of 1960s for a moment to try to understand it. Imagine with me that you grew up in a culture in which they taught you as a child that the semi-precious stone, the ruby, was satanic or cursed. Imagine that you were taught from a young age that people who owned or touched such a stone would have their minds distorted and their lives destroyed, just touching it, just holding it, just seeing it or wearing it. An aura would exist in such a culture around the ruby that people would be afraid of them. They would probably not want to have rubies in their neighborhoods, and certainly would not want their children to play with them. Cultures teach us and reinforce beliefs and taboos, some of which hold a community together in strength and purpose, and some of which are profoundly damaging. I've heard members of this congregation tell me that they were raised in churches that taught them certain things that caused them to be afraid of their own bodies, to be afraid of their own sexuality and desires, even in some cases to be afraid of their own neighbors. I've heard of churches that tell people to be afraid of people who practice other religions, and certainly to be afraid of people who don't believe in God. This kind of early training from people who we trust and institutions that we trust goes deep into our psyche. I know people who've told me that they've come to All Souls and they were so scared the first time because they thought they were going to get struck by lightning just walking in the doors here. Now, as I try to understand why people with good values, good people in so many aspects of their lives who care about others, who tuck their own children into bed with a loving heart, can also simultaneously perpetuate hatred. It takes me back to a story from 2005. Back then, I visited a Friday evening Shabbat service at B'nai Emunah Synagogue here in Tulsa when Bishop Carlton Pearson was the guest preacher. Now, I had to go see this. A black Pentecostal preacher coming to deliver a message at a conservative Jewish synagogue on a Shabbat Friday night service. Now, Bishop Pearson took the opportunity at that time to apologize to the Jews. He said that he was embarrassed and regretful that for so many years he believed and even taught that the Jews were damned, a stiff-necked people in need of conversion and salvation. He felt the same way about Unitarians, but that's not my story this morning. But in saying this, he explained that to this Jewish community on this very poignant evening that he was raised in a culture in which he'd been taught this from the time he was a child, and the people who taught him were taught this from the time they were children. And he admitted that it took him a lot of study and experience and prayer to realize that God loves everyone and that God does not favor one kind of believer over another. It reminds me that we're all products of our cultures and our upbringings, but we don't have to be stuck there. Let's look once again at the message of Jesus from the parable of the Good Samaritan. If you came on to the service early enough, you saw Karen Marsh and I doing a little updated version, a news story about a current situation. But let's begin back with the original story. In it, a Jew is walking down the road from Jericho to Jerusalem. Now remember, Jesus is himself a Jew, and Jesus is speaking to other Jewish people when he's telling this story. And he's telling a story of another Jew walking down the road. And he's robbed and beaten, and he's left at the side of the road. They stripped him of his clothes and all of his belongings. And first, a Jewish priest walks by. Doesn't stop, crosses the road, in fact. And then a Levite, who was considered a well-respected member of the Jewish community, religious community, does the same thing, walks by, does not help their fellow human being. And then, now let me just say, these are good people with good values who care, who are trying to live their lives with integrity and decency and good values. And yet they cross the road. Why? How? How does it make sense? Now, some people will say that some scholars have explained that there were some laws about touching blood. And that a priest, if he touched blood, he would have to do, it would be days before he could go back into the temple to do the ritual. So these two steer around because they can't touch the blood because of this religious prescription. Now, when we ask why was Jesus telling this story, then we have to say he was saying that real religion is not about these prescriptions. Religion's not about following some laws that are written in Scripture to the T. It's about humanity. It's about caring for each other, first and foremost. And if those teachings don't lead you to love your neighbor, then there's something wrong with the teachings or the way that you're following the teachings. He was basically saying that real religion is about love beyond beliefs. He was saying that being moral is not about what you know or who you know or how much you've read or how well respected you are in society. It's about how you treat other people. But what makes this story even more important is that when we look at what Jesus said about who does stop. He was a Samaritan. Now, the Samaritans, the Jews hated the Samaritans. They looked down on the Samaritans. They thought the Samaritans were a lesser kind of being for many different reasons. But they were the people in society. So you have to think, for today, if you're trying to tell this story, who would be the one that we would least expect to come to our rescue? That's the story that Jesus is telling. I was thinking about, Karen and I were talking about having it be a proud boy who was on the side of the road beaten, and having an African-American or a person who supports Black Lives Matter or Antifa or whatever come and be the one to help. Because what this story does, what Jesus is trying to do, is flip on our heads the idea of just our neighbor being in our in-group, but recognizing those who we exclude are also our neighbors. He's answering the question, who is our neighbor? And he uses this story to tell us our neighbor is anyone in need. Our neighbor is anyone who needs us, who we can help. So in our retelling this morning, we decided to put it in this modern context. The man is from a local Christian church in Jenks, Oklahoma, we said. And the men who walked past were a Christian minister. He was a Christian man in Jenks, and a Christian minister walks by. And another leader of the church walks by. But who stops to help him? An immigrant, a Muslim. Someone who wasn't a Christian, who some people in our society still look down upon or think are not following a true religion of value and purpose and grace. So we thought that this would be a way to make the story come alive for us now. Jesus was asking us to create a world where our neighbor was anyone in need who we could help. And Jesus was saying, in essence, that the ruby, if you go back to my metaphor of the ruby that is the evil ruby that no one's supposed to touch, he was saying it's a lie. If your culture, if your religion, if your elders taught you something about someone that said that it is cursed or less than you, it's wrong. And that was the teaching that he was trying to make by talking about the Samaritan. And he said it over and over. He said it about the adulterous woman in the temple, when he said, let the one who has not sinned throw the first stone. He said it when he upholded the dignity in his stories in his life of prostitutes, of tax collectors, of people with leprosy, of the disabled, of the mentally ill. Jesus said, they are worthy. Every person is worthy of our love. And we can't let these taboos of our society and our culture continue to dominate our thinking. Again and again, Jesus said, love your enemies and forgive those who hurt you. Now, one of the best teachers of this principle in living memory and history is Ruby Bridges. So I got to tell you a little more about the story. So in 1960, Professor Robert Cole, Harvard professor who specialized in stress in children, a psychologist, he saw this 6-year-old girl, Ruby, walking through the crowds of yelling adults, taunting her, spitting on her, threatening her. And he decided to donate his services. Say, I'm gonna go down and try to help this young girl because this is awful. He was puzzled for months how Ruby managed to deal so well with this horrible situation that she was confronting. She didn't express anger at the people. She seemed to be either managing or suppressing her emotions so well, Dr. Cole said, that he couldn't figure it out. One day, he was watching her walking through the crowd, and he saw her turn, and she mouthed some words towards the people who had been taunting her. This was once she got up onto the stairs of the school, she looked down at them, mouthed some words, and he thought, aha, it's a breakthrough. I'm going to find out what she said. She must have finally expressed her anger towards these people openly. This is great. Later, he asked her what she'd said, and she said to him, it was a prayer. She had been saying a prayer for those people every day in the car on the way to school, but that day she'd forgotten to say the prayer, and so when she realized it, she stopped before going into the school and turned and said the prayer, which was, please God, forgive these people, because even though they say those mean things, they don't know what they're doing. So you can forgive them just like you forgave those people a long time ago, she said, when they said terrible things about you. Can you imagine? Dr. Cole was just blown away. It was Ruby who made the breakthrough. It wasn't Ruby who made the breakthrough. It was Dr. Cole who made the breakthrough when he realized, this rational, intellectual professor realized there is real power in faith and in religious values, which he had previously discounted as superstitious and other kinds of things. It was Ruby's religious and moral values that gave her the strength and the dignity and the courage to face the torment and the outrageous behavior and the hateful adults day in and day out. Her religious values protected her from becoming hateful herself towards the people who even hated her. Now, it was her religion that allowed her to affirm not only her own dignity, but the dignity of these other people who were attacking her, despite their actions. Instead, she asked God to forgive them, for they know not what they're doing. Which is exactly right. They were lost. Somehow Ruby Bridges knew, and I think it was her parents and probably her minister who helped teach her, that the people who were taunting her had been taught these things, taught that she was bad and that they didn't know any better. They were lost. They had been led astray, and that she shouldn't be brought down by them and their lostness. She asked God to see through their lostness to their humanity, which allowed her to do the same thing. The question for me is, can we do the same? Can you and I see people who hate us or hate others who we love without hating them back? Can you and I recognize the innate dignity in people who have been taught many prejudices and taboos so that we don't lose our own humanity by denying anyone else theirs? Most of us have been taught to be prejudiced against other people. Some of us have been taught to be biased against certain forms of sexuality or religion or different cultures or races. It's just like being taught from the time you're young that a red ruby stone is cursed and dangerous, or a black cat. It's not that such people are bad as much as it is that they are lost. And when we do it, these are ways that we are lost and can be found. But Ruby took pity upon those people rather than letting hate fill her heart. Do we have, let me ask you, do you have hate in your heart toward anyone? It's hard not to hate those who want to harm you. It's hard not to hate those who have harmed you, who are harming you. But here's what Dr. Cole also learned about facing adversity and stress from this situation. Here's what you and I can carry with us into the new year. He learned that the question is, you are facing stress and adversity for what purpose? For what purpose? He found that people who had a definite purpose in what they were trying to accomplish were able to cope with an incredible amount of stress and adversity. We have a purpose here at All Souls. We have a purpose to work for the inherent worth and dignity of all people until that day comes. We have a purpose to protect and honor the interconnected web of all existence, all life, of which we are a part, and so is everyone else and all the rest of the nature in this beautiful world. We have a purpose to work for liberty and justice for all. As our historic doxology says, you might remember these words, we haven't sung them in a while. From all that dwells below the skies, let faith and hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land by every tongue. The history of humanity is filled to overflowing with stories of people harming and oppressing and exploiting one another. And yet, right alongside those stories have always been people working for justice and acting for mercy and helping others. Not just helping the loving members of their own in-group or their own family, but all people, anyone in need. This work is now in our hands. Go and do likewise. Happy New Year. I love you. Thank you for joining us. For 100 years, All Souls in Tulsa has been a beacon of this free faith. We offer our services and programs freely online for all those who are interested. You can help us to do this by making a one-time gift today or a reoccurring pledge. We really appreciate you joining us and being a part of helping us make All Souls in Tulsa what it is. Thank you.
We all have pain. We all have sorrow. But if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long. I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Sometimes in our lives, come on, we all have pain, we all have sorrow. If we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Sing it with us. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. For it won't be long. I'm gonna need somebody to lead. You just call home, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lead. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lead. Lean on me when you're not strong. Sing it, Rick. I'll help you carry on. Yeah. It won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lead. You just call, come on. You just call me, brother, when you come on. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend.